if you get hurt, whatever happens, Joe, it's your own fault. I hope you know first aid. If you scream, no one's gonna hear you.
We are talking about the slasher movie Red Eye, directed and co-written by Tristan Clay. Now, will this movie make you feel like you've enjoyed a nice juicy ribeye, or will it make you feel like you've got the pink eye? Let's discuss. So, like I said, this one is written by Tristan Clay and Destinie Orndoff, who also co-stars in this movie, and this actually has Jessica Cameron and Heather Dorff, both of who are quite prolific screen queen actors, and they've actually got their own YouTube channel. And it ultimately tells the story of these four friends who decide they're going to do this documentary about this kind of local urban legend called Red Eye, who is ultimately a cannibal who lives in the kind of these like hills in the middle of nowhere somewhere. So they decide to go up there, kind of Blair Witch style, and interview the kind of some locals, etc. Do a little bit of background. There doesn't seem to be much idea about what they're actually going to be doing. No real kind of plan, but there you go. And while they're there, obviously things start to go sideways, and then maybe there'll be this masked killer lurking in the woods out there, wanting to give them a good old killing. How does it end? Obviously you have to watch the movie to find out. So let's discuss what works and what doesn't work with Red Eye. Let's go through the negatives first of all, I think, this time. The biggest one for me is the sound. The sounds here are awful in a number of ways. So first of all, the sound mixing is goddamn awful for this movie. For example, you'll have a conversation between two people who are sat down, and we'll see it from a number of angles, and you'll just hear like an ambient buzz, for example, in one kind of like one camera, but when it flips to like another camera, it won't be there. So there's this real kind of like horrible kind of sound mixing in it. So the quality of the sound varies from kind of like shot to shot. It's really horrible sound mixing. It's possibly the worst sound mixing I've actually reviewed, if I've got to be honest with you. It's so noticeable. And the other thing is, some of the voices are so over ADR'd. I mean, it's just ridiculous at points, to be honest with you. It's so overly done. This movie has very much an overproduced feel to it. Not just with the audio, but some of the other aspects as well. It's just very, very feels overproduced. It's actually quite a low budget movie, but nonetheless, I feel the kind of the post-production here has really hampered this and made it feel like very kind of artificial feeling, an artificial feel to it. When it comes down to it, there isn't a huge amount of plot. It is just these four kids kind of going off and getting killed off ultimately by a slasher. They do try to have a little bit of a twist with it, but I think it's fairly obvious what the kind of twist will be ultimately. Acting wise, mixed bag. Some of the acting I feel is pretty decent, but there is one character who is this one of the male characters with a kind of like, I think it's From Beyond t-shirt. He's got a horrible actor, really kind of overdoes it ultimately. So there you go. On the positive side, and staying with the acting, I feel Heather Dorff especially gives a pretty good performance of this, probably the most developed out of our four sort of characters here, who has quite an interesting backstory, and she's never really pigeonholed into a particular kind of character type, which I kind of quite liked. She does feel more or less a kind of like an amalgam of different sort of styles of these different archetypes, but never really falls into the cliches of any particular one. And part of that is obviously down to the character writing, but also her performance as well, which I thought was quite good. Jessica Cameron has a smaller role. She's more of a kind of a local. We only ever really see her in a couple of scenes, so it's a small sample size there. What I was surprised at with this film was the level of brutality and the kind of the depravity that this kind of killer actually has here. This killer really is one twisted sicko. I was like quite shocked ultimately by some of the brutal scenes and the kind of the explicitness that we actually see on the screen here. This movie is not for the faint-hearted, let me just say that for you. And I've got to say the kind of the gore effects, although on the cheaper side, were pretty effective, and I feel like the death scenes from the actors were all pretty good and brutal at the same time. I did appreciate, obviously, its attempt to have a somewhat of a twist to it, but it's a twist that we've seen a number of times in a few other movies. So, like I said, I didn't think it was particularly kind of outstanding. But ultimately, at its heart, this movie is a kind of a very kind of bare bones slasher movie. But I think if you are a slasher fan, there is enough here to kind of like to make you warrant watching it. I feel if you won't be disappointed. I don't think. I think the slasher. The idea is quite interesting, and ultimately how it's kind of built up. I think the way that goes is quite unique, and like I've said, it's a pretty damn brutal movie. So if you like some pretty gory and quite distressing death scenes, then you definitely want to check it out. But ultimately, it's pretty forgettable other than that. But I've got to say, obviously, very well, a low budget movie. It does its job. It doesn't outstay its welcome. And it does have a few decent points to it. So I'll give this movie a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.